Hey class, today we're here with Melissa, who's been diagnosed with Bipolar I disorder, and she's very passionate about spreading awareness about this disorder and dispelling stigmas. And she's here to talk with us about her experience living with bipolar disorder. Before we get into that, let's just start with, what was your life like before bipolar disorder?
Before bipolar disorder, I would say I was just like any other young, 20-something, out and about, having a good time with friends, working.
Did you have any idea that maybe you had some kind of mood disorder? Was there any indication?
Not at all. Not at all.
So, how did you find out when you had bipolar disorder? Kind of walk us through what happened when you went from before to after.
Well, as someone who was in their young 20s, I definitely did do a little bit of experimenting with drugs, and I did that one evening and was not okay after that. I started acting erratically, putting significance to things that normal people would say that doesn't make sense.
How did your family and friends react when they started seeing you do this? Like, did they think something was up, or were they still not sure?
Some people didn't know, what was going on, and they thought it was strange. Other people were like, oh, that's just Melissa. But within about 24 hours, I was placed in the emergency room and then taken to the psych ward, where I stayed for a couple of weeks.
So tell us about that experience. Like, just sum it up for us. What was that like for you?
It was horrific. It was painful to be isolated like that and to be labeled as bipolar. That was really hard to take.
Did you know what bipolar disorder was when you got labeled, as you say, with it?
That was my first time hearing that term being applied to me, and I really didn't have much understanding of what all bipolar disorder entailed.
Since then, you've had lots of experience with being in the psych ward, as you shared with me before, and I think later on in the semester we'll talk more about that experience. But today,
Okay.
I want to talk about just being bipolar. How has it affected your quality of relationships and life in general?
It's definitely had a huge impact on my life. I feel like almost like every time I've been hospitalized that the rug gets ripped out from under me.
That's a good metaphor.
It really destroys relationships.
Like, in what way? Can you be a little more specific, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh no. When I'm psychotic or when I'm really manic, I can be very agitated and say really hateful things and hurtful things to people that I love and care about. And that's, of course, really difficult for the person on the receiving end to take.
Okay, so you brought up mania. Can you just describe a little bit more about what mania is for people who maybe have no idea?
Mania takes many faces. Hypomania is one thing, too, that we should discuss. And hypo just means you're just under that mania. So when I'm hypomanic, I'm out over shopping and overspending. I am maybe doing risky behaviors. I'm very, very talkative, even more so than what I am normally. It's just more risky behavior in general, and you just feel really, I just feel really emboldened to go out and have a good time. And
so basically, you're the life of the party, and everybody enjoys being around you when you're hypomanic.
Well, when you're hypomanic, yes. But whenever you hit the mania, and that's usually what happens, what goes up is going to go all the way up, and then it's going to fall. That can get into psychotic behavior, which is a danger to myself and others, and requires hospitalization.
Okay. And kind of speaking about those things, what are some stereotypes or judgments that you've kind of encountered letting people know that you're bipolar, or just being manic, or having a psychotic break, or depressive, which is the other side of the spectrum?
It's been a full range of people that are fully supportive to people that don't really understand it all, and therefore have a lot distrust of
maybe of the medical diagnosis. Do some people believe that you could just change it yourself? Like, you
I've
don't
heard
need
that
medication?
from people, yes.
Okay.
And it just, whenever you talk with people, sometimes they say, oh, you know what, that person is mentally ill, and it's a put down, and they say, look, this person doesn't function in society, this person is not normal.
Yeah, or a way of explaining something that you wouldn't normally accept, oh, well, they're just mentally ill, and just kind of wave it aside.
Yes.
To excuse it. You talked about mistrust, though. I want to kind of go back to that because I think that's an important piece. Do you find that happens in like work when you're trying to have work? Do you disclose that information with your employer?
I was very open and they were very supportive, but I don't necessarily recommend doing that because there is so much stigma and misunderstanding around mental health diagnosis. Yeah.
Are people afraid that like one day you're just going to go manic?
Yes, I've heard people ask. I had a coworker say, "Hey, so what did you do? Are you cray cray? Like, is it like that film with Winona Ryder where she's in the psych ward?" And I said, "Well,
what's the name of that film?
Not really.
They might want to look it up. I know that. Okay, well, Google film with Winona Ryder.
Yes, I can't remember. Okay. But a lot of misconceptions. A lot of people are shocked whenever I disclose to them that I'm bipolar. They say, "No, how could you be?"
Why do you think they say that?
Because for all intents and purposes, whenever I am managing my bipolar with my medication, with my therapy, and I am living life, I don't look anything different than the next person, that's at your job or that's your family member.
And that kind of segues into the idea of bipolar disorder and whether or not it's a disability. I know that's kind of a big thing, a struggle that you've had kind of come up against and heard something similar. It's like, well, maybe, you've had a job, you've been able to manage your life, you clearly are okay, but you've had 3 hospitalizations. So obviously there's some disability there. What's your experience with that? Give us a little bit more on that.
Dealing with the government and what they consider disabilities, what they'll assist you with, it's been very highly frustrating because I will go in and for instance, I went and saw a psychiatrist that was going to determine if I could keep my medical benefits. And he had the audacity to say, well, you seem so intelligent and you're so well put together that...
Like somehow if you have bipolar disorder, you're not intelligent? Or
yes,
you're not put together?
Exactly. And I really, in retrospect, I would have loved to have said to him, this is not about a cognitive disability. This is about a mental health illness.
Yeah.
And it's very highly frustrating to struggle with this disease and not have it be acknowledged that this is real.
Can you give us like a snapshot of what your life like day to day or week to week, or just kind of like a basic, what's it like for you living with bipolar? Are there some days you have a hard time getting out of bed? Are there days where you spend too much and go crazy? Or what's your cycle like? Give us
I feel like I'm on medication, and I take that every day. And I mentioned therapy, doing both of those things, along with exercise and socializing with my friends and family. I live a very normal life. I get up, I go to work, I come home, I fix my dinner, I go out with friends, I volunteer. I'm living life just like anybody else.
That's really great. So what is one takeaway that you'd like us to leave from this discussion about bipolar disorder?
I would say the takeaway that I would like for people to leave with is that mental illness is real, and if you don't have it, somebody has some sort of mental illness, and just be okay with that. Be okay with putting that out there to people and saying, hey, I'm not my disease. It doesn't own me. I am a person. And
it's not your identity.
It's not my identity.
So instead of saying I am bipolar, you say I have.
Yes, exactly.
Making that distinction, that small distinction. That's really great. What about for people who are watching this that might suspect that they have a family or friend or even themselves as bipolar? What are some things that you recommend, or signs or symptoms that they should maybe look for, or anything like that?
Well, I'm not a doctor, and so I don't want to say...
Sure.
I don't want to say, oh, yeah, let's look at these symptoms, because the symptoms there's a wide range of them. But if you think that you have a mental health disorder or illness, I would strongly encourage you to talk to your doctor and discuss what you've been struggling with, or talk with your family members, your friends, those that are close with you, and say, hey, what have you observed? What do you see that's been different? Or to ask for help. Ask for help, to reach out.
was a good takeaway. Well, thanks for talking with us today, and we'll be revisiting it and talking about hospitalizations later on.
Great, my pleasure.